down 57.8% in 2022. Is Snowflake stock a buy for 2023? I'm going to answer that question in this video, so stay tuned. The first thing I'm going to look at to answer that question is Snowflake's quarterly revenue and quarterly revenue growth. Quarterly revenue in the purple here, you could see very nice growth here, starting at 80 million around 2020, growing to 557 million and one of their most recent quarters. But if you look at their quarterly revenue growth, you see something a little bit disturbing in that you see consistent decelerating revenue growth starting at 120% year over year revenue growth in 2021, falling all the way down to 66% revenue growth in its most recent quarter. Next, I want to look at Snowflake's operating income, and I want to see operating income at least decreasing as its revenue is growing. Of course, these fast growing companies like Snowflake, I don't expect to see profitability in the near term while they're in their rapid growth phases, but I at least want to see some evidence of economies in scale. And I'm not really seeing that here. Operating income is operating losses are increasing as time is going on, as their revenues are increasing, starting with a loss of 100 million in early 2020 and increasing to a loss of about 200 million in 2022. So their losses are increasing rather than decreasing as revenue is expanding. The next thing I want to look at is cash flow from operations, because many tech stocks are able to pay their employees in stock-based compensation, which causes them to look like they're losing a lot of money on the bottom line, which they are, but then their cash flow, they're generating positive cash flow from operations because stock-based compensation is a non-cash expense. And that is the case with Snowflake, and I could see nice growth in their cash flow from operations, starting at about zero and increasing to 79 million in its most recent quarter. I could draw a line here and I could see evidence in economies and scale and growing its cash flow from operations. So that is nice to see from an investor's perspective, the growth in cash from operations from Snowflake. The next thing I want to see is average shares outstanding, because like I mentioned earlier, if they're paying employees in stock-based compensation, that's creating new shares, which is diluting shareholders, which could be bad news longer term if they're doing too much of this. And we do see some dilution here. They had about 250 million shares outstanding in 2020. That's risen to 320 million in 2022. So they are diluting shareholders to a degree, but considering their very rapid growth on the top line and also their growth in cash flow from operations, I would say proportionally speaking, it's not alarming to see this level of shareholder dilution. And finally, I want to look at its valuation to determine if the stock is a buy for 2023. Looking at its price to sales ratio, I'm seeing it trading at price to sales of 24, which is the cheapest it has sold for going back to 2021. Of course, being a newly created publicly traded company, we don't have very much history to go back on, so that's a little bit concerning. And price to sales of 24 is expensive. That's expensive. That's higher than the average price to earnings ratio of the S&P 500. So a price to sales of 24 is considerably expensive. And then looking at the price to free cash flow of 129, that also is expensive, just looking on it on an absolute basis. So the stock is expensive. And you can argue that it's justifiable for the stock to be trading so expensively considering how fast the company is growing. But at the same time, to push back, I would say yes, the company is growing fast, but that growth has been decelerating alarmingly quickly. So we don't know how fast how much that growth rate is going to fall off a cliff here going into 2023. I don't like to pay these kinds of premium valuations when revenue growth and cash flow growth and profit growth is decelerating. I'd like to see accelerating revenue growth if I'm going to be paying these kinds of premium valuations. So for that reason, I'm going to say Snowflake stock is not a buy for 2023. Okay, so that's all I've got for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.